All right, Gavin Newsom, 2028. I mean, like, how do you think he'll be received by the Democratic Party?
Oh, they'll love him. The Democratic Party will love him.
The base, maybe the voters.
Yeah, the base. That's what I mean.
Yeah.
Because...
And you'll be thinking...
that I want to slit my wrist. That's what I'll be thinking.
Anna Kasparian is the co-host and executive producer of the Young Turks YouTube channel. She is one of the most important voices in media today, and she's somebody whose opinions are constantly showing up in my timeline because she has such an influential perspective on the way we're talking about the news right now. She says some things that I don't agree with. She has some controversial takes, but she's somebody who's always honest and forward about where she's coming from. And I think she does really, truly approach issues in a really fair-minded way. So I'm thrilled to have her on the show. I'm really grateful that she's giving us some of her time, and I hope you guys enjoy the interview. Anna Kasparian, thank you so much for being here.
Thank you for having me.
All right, I'd like to start with a little bit of your story. I mean, you obviously have a really popular voice, especially sort of in this like populist left space, which I want to talk to you a little bit about. But I'm curious just like how you got here. What's your background in terms of how you ended up hosting Young Turks and having this kind of big YouTube media empire?
Well, I realized pretty early on in my life that I loved news media. I was inspired by Barbara Walters when she had her heyday on ABC's 2020. And I remember one of the interviews she had was with one of like Saddam Hussein's wives. And I just thought it was such an amazing way of earning a living, right? Talking to all sorts of people from all around the world and hearing their stories. And I had the kind of parents that like pressured me to figure out what I wanted to do in life very early on. So by like middle school, I knew I wanted to do journalism.
Wow.
And I went to journalism school at Cal State Northridge. Loved my experience there, graduated early. I went to like a community college at the same time I went to high school. So I graduated college 2 years early. And then I entered the job market. And the first media job I had was at CBS Radio at a station called KNX 1070. And I hated it. I hated it so much. When I graduated, the news writers had just gone on strike. And so the newsroom was really strange due to that dynamic. But outside of that, just watching what they did day in and day out, I realized like the highest position I can have here is an anchor. You literally just kind of come on air, regurgitate what someone else has written for you. There's no critical thinking. There's no real deep interviews happening here. And so I was kind of in a crisis because I thought I made a major mistake in my decision. And so I did what everyone was doing at the time. I applied to graduate school. I loved politics, so I decided to get a poli-sci degree. And then in the meantime, I got approached by a colleague of mine who was like, hey, do you want some temporary work? It's only going to be 2 weeks, but I know you're going to go to Europe and you need some extra cash, so you want to do it? And I was like, okay, sure. What's the name of the show? What is this? She said the Young Turks. And as an Armenian, I immediately like panicked. I'm like, there's a show called the Young Turks? How could they do? Then I figured out what the name of the show was really about. And at that point, I was just very curious about it. And yes, I was very young. I was 20 years old and I could definitely use the cash. So I just decided to, ask some questions. The main producer at the time called me for an interview, and the interview was literally just, can you come in at 3 a.m? And I said yes. So I show up at 3 a.m, and I ended up falling in love with the place because it was so different from anything else I had experienced. It was very heavy on the commentary, which I was told in journalism school, run away as far as possible. You are not supposed to share your opinion. You have to earn your ability to do that, right? And so, but I was just so amazed by the honesty and how raw, Cenk Uygur, the founder of the company and also the main host, how raw his commentary was and how honest it was. And that's what I wanted to do. And so when the 2-week temporary position was over, I asked to stay, and I said I was willing to do anything because they didn't really have any news-related openings. I mean, it was just a startup. There was barely any employees to begin with. And Cenk Uygur asked me if I was willing to do marketing for TYT. And If there's anything anyone knows about me, it's that I hate marketing.
Yeah, I was going to say the answer is no.
No, I said yes. I said yes, and then I did my best, but I got real lucky because a month later, the female co-host on the show ended up leaving media altogether. She ended up working for Third Way, actually, a think tank, yeah. And I started doing, at first, one story a day. It was always like a lame entertainment gossip story. That turned into a segment a day. That turned into my own hour a day. And then I had to ask myself, okay, how do I weasel my way out of doing entertainment news so I can do political news instead? And little by little, I chipped away at Jank and I got my way. And now I'm the executive producer of the show.
Yeah, I mean, it's incredible what you guys have built. I'm curious if you could, describe to me what you imagine when you think about your audience. Like, who do you think it is? In my, like, from where I'm sitting, I feel like you're speaking kind of this populist left online, but I don't know if that's totally accurate or not.
I don't know if that's totally accurate. I think that I've personally gone through some serious changes in my political identity in recent years. I would say it began in 2022, and I'm still continuing to evolve because I realized that a lot of my deeply held political beliefs were flawed, right? I wasn't thinking about things in a more nuanced and, quite honestly, fair way. And so I started speaking against some of the, I guess, extremities on the left that some did not appreciate. And so the audience has been changing as a result of that. I think we definitely have members of the populist left in our audience. That probably makes up the bulk of it. But I will say the majority of communication I get from our audience members in the form of emails, typically more conservative leaning, individuals who are like, I disagree with a lot of what you say, but I really appreciate your honesty and your openness. Or sometimes I say things that change a conservative's mind. And so I want to kind of go out of the way to not have a one-sided audience. I want an audience of independent thinkers more than anything. Yeah,
I mean, it's certainly something that resonates with me a lot. It's been our goal at Tangle, and it's really hard because you find a way to piss everybody off when you don't kind of get in the one camp or the other, and then you lose people collectively. I wanted to ask you about the evolution, though. I mean, you said on your show and in some media appearances that you feel like you're moving away from strictly being on the left and identifying more as independent or unaligned. When you think about like the core principles that anchor your politics now, what comes to mind for you?
Fairness, I would say. Fairness and justice and honesty, right? I've gotten to a point where I can suss out inauthentic BS, and I can't stand it. I want nothing to do with it. And I also don't like partisan rot. I don't like anyone who's partisan brained. Like, it's not that I don't like them as a person. Engaging with them on political issues is just a fruitless effort because they're going to cheer for their tribe no matter what. I mean, a perfect example, I don't know if you're familiar with Graham Plattner, who's
of course,
So look, guy had a Nazi tattoo for 20 years. I'm sorry, like I'm not going to defend that. I'm not buying this excuse of like, okay, even if I take at face value, he accidentally got a Nazi tattoo 20 years ago.
And nobody told him about it for the last 20 years.
Well, he found out around 10 years ago there was a Nazi tattoo. But like, if I found out I had a Nazi tattoo accidentally, which would never happen, but let's say that happened. Second, I find out, oh my God, this is a Nazi tattoo. I'm removing it or covering it. He covered it like a few days ago, once it became a political liability. I'm not going to defend the guy because, at least in terms of what he's saying, he aligns with some of my views on economic issues, right? I think it's important to be honest and not provide cover for your side when they engage in the same type of activity or behavior that you would criticize the other side for doing, you know?
Yeah, it's interesting. I mean, I think kind of to that point, one of the things I know you've said sort of drove you away or is driving you away sometimes from the Democratic Party or who we think of as the liberal base is an intolerance of debate, I think is how you put it, which I like. I mean, I think it's something I see. There's sort of like this loyalty pledge that we see with Trump now on the conservative side. And then on the left, I often feel, an intolerance of debate. I think it's a really good way to put it. I'm wondering like how you define that and if you can give an example of something you've experienced that you felt like came from the left of you?
Sure. I mean, I think one of the prime examples that I personally experienced last year was when I agreed to go on Glenn Beck's show. I don't know why I agreed to do it. It was a pleasant conversation. I mean, I don't agree with much of what he believes, but it's okay. I think the reason why I just started saying yes to everything and showing my willingness to talk with anyone is because I wanted to make a point about how this doesn't, by definition, engaging with someone you disagree with doesn't mean you are now co-signing onto their beliefs. It means that you're, honestly, more than anything, getting to know what they actually believe instead of sitting back and letting others summarize someone's character for you. And I realized that in many years of my career, I was allowing people who I thought I could trust tell me what I should think about the others, right? The people who believe differently from me. So I'm kind of like in this quest to understand people and what their arguments really are. And I want to go straight to the source as opposed to, just rely on whether it's corporate media, legacy media, anyone else has to say about it. But once I did that interview, we had a TYT contributor who quit and made a spectacle about it.
Just for going on the show?
Just for going on Glenn Beck's show. Wow. He didn't cite anything I said that offended him. He made the argument that just by having a conversation with Glenn Beck, I'm harming Black bodies. I don't know what that means. I don't think I've harmed a single Black body or any body at all. But he quit in a very spectacular fashion. We lost a huge portion of our subscribers as a result of that. Wow. And I was happy to see it because I don't want people like that in the audience. I want independent thinkers who are able to actually watch the conversation and decide for themselves whether or not I said something that was so egregious that they can no longer be supporters of the program.
Yeah, that seems really tough to navigate. I'm not really sure how to handle that. I mean, personally, I've sort of begun subscribing to something I've heard Megyn Kelly say, which, a person who I have a lot of disagreements with, and she just says, I'm responsible for what I say and nobody else. Mm-hmm. And I think you can't really ask for more than that for somebody. It's okay. I think we should police our own side. And there's something to that, if you're on the left or if you're in this kind of heterodox independent space and you see something that feels rotten, you should speak out.
Totally. And
I wish Megyn would maybe do more on, calling out people like Candace Owens for certain things or whatever. But I respect the position of I'm responsible for what I say and that's it. I'm curious, one of the, obviously, I think anybody's familiar with your work knows that you've been really outspoken about what's happening in Gaza. And I know I've seen you get some criticism. Some of it, I think, quite unfairly. I watch your show, I'm a fan, and I'm somebody who has identified as a Zionist. And I see you, in my view, trying really hard to be careful about the way you say things, to not step on the landmines. Nevertheless, some of your criticism is really harsh about Israel. And I know that you've been accused of being an anti-Semite and there's been death threats and it's gotten really scary. I'm curious if you just maybe start by talking a little bit about what the experience has been like navigating this issue. And then I'd like to ask a couple of questions to kind of clarify some of your views on the issue.
Well, navigating the issue has been, I wouldn't say necessarily difficult because when you're not an anti-Semite, you're not really worried about, saying anti-Semitic things. What's been difficult for me, though, is, the people who are actually closest to me, and I'm very tight-knit, because of what we do for work. There's only so many people you feel comfortable being yourself 100% of the time around, And so at TYT, one of my favorite people is a guy named Dave Kohler, and he happens to be Jewish. And, he had approached me about how much he's struggling through everything that's happening. My best friend, since we were kids, and she's basically a sister to me, her name's Lauren, she's Jewish. I go to Seder with her a lot. And I just think the Jewish religion is a beautiful religion. I've never hated Jewish people. I think what's happening in Gaza is an injustice of epic proportions. And so how do I comment on these things without, or how do I comment on these things in a way that ensures that people do not begin dehumanizing Jewish people or dehumanizing Israeli civilians, even if the majority or bulk of Israeli civilians agree with what the government is doing? I don't really care. They're civilians at the end of the day. They're not the power brokers. They're not the decision makers. All of my feedback and criticism and sometimes rage, yes, is directed toward those in the positions of power who are making the decisions, right? And so to me, it's important to remind people of that over and over again. And yeah, it's hard because people like to conflate the two. And I think it's unfair because I believe that it's important to judge people as individuals as opposed to a collective, you know? And I think that too many people like to think of issues as a collective.
Yeah. I mean, it's interesting. Like, even hearing you talk, I remember on a show that you did recently, you were making this case, basically, like you were talking about the power brokers, I think, like, you know, these like billionaires buying up media companies,
Yes.
like the Free Press or, the Netanyahu regime or whatever. And then there are people downstream of that who are hearing an anti-Semitic trope. They're like,
Right.
oh, like the rich Jews are buying up the media company, and that's what Anna Kasparian's banging on. And the thing you're trying to say is like, these are the people I'm mad at because they're the ones with actual power.
Right.
But you still somehow get stuck there.
Yeah. And I don't know how many of my critics are, good faith in what they're saying, or if they're paranoid that this type of commentary is going to direct hatred toward Jewish people, which I certainly do not want to happen. It does remind me, though, of something. It's interesting. Like, you talk about the heterodox community, and this whole debate reminds me of something when it comes to the Black community and how differently the commentary is when it comes to complaints from the Black community versus now, the, I guess, Zionist community, because a lot of Jewish Americans have been very critical of what's happening in Gaza as well. There's been like this argument that if you are too critical of a Black person, you are being racist. And now it's like the same type of thing happening when it comes to the Israeli government, or let's say these billionaires who are buying up media. I get to criticize someone if they're engaging in bad behavior. I don't care what their identity is, whether they're Black or Jewish or whatever. Like, just because the Holocaust happened doesn't mean that critique toward a specific Jewish person who's behaving poorly is not allowed, or should be banned. But heterodox people, especially those who really blew up during the Biden administration, they seem to be able to understand that argument when it came to the Black community. And now all of a sudden it's very different when it comes to the Jewish community. And I just think that's wrong.
Do you feel like you're getting the criticism from sort of this media ecosystem that you operate in a little bit?
Totally, yeah.
Yeah.
And I think a lot of people are also scared, right? Like, I think they're afraid that if they engage in the criticism of the Israeli government the way I am, then they're going to be thought of or looked upon as anti-Semites. So they either stay quiet or they might even pile on when I know they're not happy with what's going down in Gaza either. So
yeah.
It's a difficult thing because anti-Semitism is real. I'm not at all going to deny that. And I see it all over X. And I don't begrudge anyone who's worried about being targeted in a terrible way. Ironically, though, I got targeted in a pretty violent way just this past week by a woman who's kind of been whipped up into this fury by an organization that keeps taking my videos out of context to make it seem like I am talking about Israeli civilians or Jewish people in general, which I am not at all.
What happened?
So I was walking my dog and I noticed that there was this woman who I'd seen in the neighborhood before. So I didn't feel threatened by her initially, but she was standing in the middle of the sidewalk and blocking it as I was approaching, and her dog's like going nuts. Okay, she has like a doodle of some sort, and she kind of has this wide stance and she's like looking at me in a menacing way. Her dog's going nuts, but she's like standing still. And I'm like, oh, maybe she's trying to train her dog or something, and that annoyed look on her face is because her dog is acting out. Let me just go around her. So I literally walk into the street with my dog to get around her. And then she just approaches me with her dog, like kind of like doing a sicking motion. And so I'm listening to music. So I take my headphones off at that point. I'm like, what's going on? What are you doing? Like, what are you doing? And she called me a Jew hater. And I'm like, wait, no. Like, there's a misunderstanding. And I was under the ridiculous impression that maybe we can have a conversation. But she's 7 a.m. She's screaming at me. And her dog's going nuts. I have a little dog, 20 pounds. So all I'm thinking about is getting my dog back home. And then as I'm walking away, she says, good luck to your husband dealing with you. And I said, my husband loves me. And her response was, that's why we're trying to get him fired. So to me, that was an indication that she's part of this organized group that's been coming after me. But more importantly, and I really do mean more importantly, they've been coming after my husband for my political commentary, and they're trying to get him fired. And I just think that's wrong. He's not a political person. He works in like athletics, and he's just like, he's mortified by the whole thing. He's worried about my safety, but I'm more worried about him, to be honest.
I'm sorry that happened to you.
Thank you.
I've experienced not quite stuff as direct as that, but it is really unnerving when the online comes into the real life. World. Yeah, it's really scary. All right, I don't want to spend a bunch of more time on this, but I have one question for you, I guess, just to wrap up, which is, again, I agree with you. I feel like your views get misconstrued on this issue a lot. I don't want to debate the genocide stuff. I think that horse has been beaten. But the new news is like we have this peace deal that's sort of, as we record this now, it feels like it's holding tenuously. Tell me a little bit about, like, in the Kasparian world, what your viewpoint on a good outcome is here. What's the future that you would hope for? Try and describe it for me in terms of like the relationship between Israelis and Palestinians and what happens going forward, I guess.
The ideal magical thinking outcome would be Jews and Palestinians living together in one state and respecting each other, respecting one another's religion. I don't think that's totally impossible, but it really does feel impossible at the moment. I have historically advocated for a two-state solution because I want to go along with the will of the people. And if you look at polling, both on the Israeli side and the Palestinian side, they want their own states. And I think they should be allowed to have that. I would, if I could snap my fingers and have anything happen right now where I think most people would be happy, maybe not the Israelis, we'd go back to 1967 borders and respect that. And in terms of having a peacekeeping mission, I would love to have an actual peacekeeping mission that protects both sides, right? Both the Israelis and the Palestinians. I don't think that's going to happen. I don't even think we're going to have a two-state solution in which Palestinians get to keep Gaza and the West Bank, and the Israelis, are safe, and there won't be any problems. Right now, I don't see this as a peace agreement. I think that there is a very fragile ceasefire in place, and based on what I'm reading in Israeli media, because I think U.S. media hides the ball quite a bit. They're very honest in Israeli media. They just tell you straight up what they're planning to do and what the Trump administration is planning to do. And so now you have the IDF occupying 53% of the Gaza Strip. There's no indication they plan to withdraw. In fact, there's every indication that Kushner and basically the Trump administration, they're planning on facilitating the reconstruction of that 53% of the Gaza Strip. And the argument is, well, Hamas won't demilitarize. They won't give up their arsenal. Which is mostly Israeli bombs that haven't detonated yet and things like that. But okay, fine. And so as a result, we're not going to reconstruct anything there. That's allegedly going to pressure Hamas to give up their arms. I don't think that's going to happen. I think in the end, what's very likely going to happen is the whole Gaza resort town thing that Trump had hinted at. He's going to get that. That's what they're going to do. That's what they're working toward. It's so obvious. It's so obvious to me. And what I can't stand, I have to be honest, like the dog and pony show is what offends me the most. That's when I start to get heated. When people try to tell me that everything I'm reading is fake and no, that's not going to happen. And then everything I say is going to happen happens. But we keep playing the same game of, no, that's not going to happen. And then once it does happen, they're not going to acknowledge it. And they're just going to move on to the next thing. I just want peace in the region. I want the slaughtering to stop. I want the humanity of both sides to be recognized. And right now, I don't feel like that's happening,
I think it was Thomas Friedman who said something that always stuck with me, which was, when it comes to the Israeli-Palestinian conflict, what's said in English doesn't matter. The only thing that matters is what's said in Hebrew and Arabic and what they're saying in Middle Eastern media. And I think it's a good tip for a lot of people who try and kind of drop into it. Okay, I want to move off the Israel stuff. So you're out of the hot seat.
Okay.
I'm curious, I guess, to move to, I think, a really relevant thing that's happening right now in this moment as we sit here politically, which is the kind of listless Democratic Party, I would say. One that to me feels like it doesn't have a great unified message aside from Trump bad, which has been the message for the last 10 years. There's a lot of fractures and divisions. I'm wondering if you could just describe this moment for me, like where are the dividing lines in the party that you're seeing, and maybe where do you think the party should head? I mean, if you were DNC chair, what would be your message to them top down?
Shed the identity politics entirely. Moderate on the social issues, not entirely, but there are excesses on the left that need to be dealt with, I think. But think about what made the Democratic Party popular at one point. And it was the politicians who honestly would campaign similar to how Trump campaigned, right? Focusing on the economic anxieties that Americans have and what your solutions are to actually address those anxieties. This past presidential election was one of the most embarrassing for the Democrats. No one talked about healthcare until it was asked in one debate, right? The one debate between Kamala Harris and Donald Trump. Obviously, Donald Trump had no plans for improving our healthcare system, but neither did Kamala Harris. She didn't campaign on any of that. I don't even remember what she did campaign on because it was such a weird, muddled message. You went from cost controls, which I'm, price fixing, I don't think is a good policy. Let me just be clear about that. But it kind of went from that debate to, I want to help small businesses. And then that was it. So there wasn't really much to campaign on because I think you're right. I think that the political or strategic muscle for the Democratic Party is totally atrophied because they've just leaned into Trump hate the entire time. Now, you can hate Trump. That's fine. You can campaign against Trump. That's fine. But what are you offering as a substitute to Trumpism? And I think that corporate interests have really taken over the mainstream Democratic Party to the point where they don't lean into the economic messaging as much and instead focus way too much on race, on sexual orientation, on everything that makes us different from one another. So you end up fracturing the Democratic base. And I saw that issue really becoming a problem all the way back to 2016. Mm-hmm. And in this past election cycle, I think it killed the Democrats entirely.
I feel like thinking back on the election, one of the things that they were hammering a ton to me was sort of the pro-democracy message.
Right.
I'm wondering if that resonates, for you, or you think that's something. I always found it a little stale personally.
Yeah.
Now we're sitting here and I'm watching some of what Trump's doing and I'm like, I really wish there were a lot more people who cared about democracy and we need some of that pushback. But at the time, I was more inclined, I think, to your view that I don't know. I'm curious, I guess, how do you think that landed?
Trump definitely engages in authoritarian, he's got authoritarian tendencies. There's no question about it. I just didn't take the Democrats seriously on that messaging because I know what their behavior is like during primaries. I know what their behavior is like. What their behavior was like in this past election cycle. In 2024, you have Joe Biden, who promised not to run for re-election, running for re-election, hiding the ball from the American people in regard to his cognitive decline, essentially anointing his replacement, Kamala Harris. What they engaged in was undemocratic. It was illiberal. And so they had no leg to stand on when it came to making that argument. So I personally just wouldn't hear it from them.
An open primary would have been your preference,
100%.
Yeah.
100%. I mean, ideally, Biden wouldn't have run for re-election.
Right.
And ideally, as soon as everyone finally realized his cognitive decline is very severe and should not, he should not be running, he waited another month, thus hurting, the person he anointed.
Right. And you and I will be sitting down with Alex Thompson, who wrote Original Sin tonight.
Right.
Which basically documents the fact that a lot of people knew a lot earlier than any of us ever thought. Is there somebody in the party right now that you feel, I guess, some sort of political alignment with, or that you're like, I wish this person was the standard bearer, like the face of the Democratic Party?
Katie Herzog, maybe?
Interesting.
Yeah, I'm like a total fangirl of Katie Herzog. Yeah, I mean, look, in terms of modern day Democratic politicians, I haven't seen anyone really rock my socks off, to be honest.
Elected officials.
Elected officials, exactly. I know that there's a lot of excitement about Zoran Mamdani. I don't know about some of his economic policies. I think some of them come from a very good place, but I've seen them implemented in places like Los Angeles and did not work out so well. So I'm just going to wait and see.
Like what kind of stuff?
When they got rid of public transportation fares during COVID, that ended up being pretty disastrous for our metro system. And also, where are you going to find the resources to maintain public transit if you're going to make, the bus fares free, for instance? Little things like that. He has moderated his views on policing, but I don't know if it's going to be enough to avoid the damage that's been done to places like LA and our police force. LA cut the police budget by $150 million in 2021, got rid of a bunch of sworn officers. Now we have a severe shortage. And as a result, the sworn officers who remain are clocking in a ton of overtime. We are paying far more for policing, like record amounts, and we're getting far less because there's fewer sworn officers. So you have longer wait times if you call and there's an emergency. It's been kind of disastrous, to say the least. And then on top of that, you add the layer of the Trump administration and the ICE raids and how you need LAPD to clock in even more overtime. And so that's really cutting into the city budget. And I just want Zoran Mamdani and other leftist Democrats to learn lessons from these policy failures and recalibrate, right? You have the right idea maybe, but maybe the implementation needs to be tinkered with a little bit.
How long have you been living in LA?
My entire life.
All right. So I don't know. Give me your assessment. I mean, California now on the right is like, this is what a failed democratic state looks like.
They're right.
You think so?
Yeah, totally.
Why not leave?
Because I'm not going to let the crazies drive me out. There's bad policy. I mean, there have been dark times in LA in the past. I mean, the 80s, the 90s, it's
the 2000s
for different reasons.
Yeah.
But, I feel like the sweet spot in LA was 2013, 2014. And then everything just kind of went to shit after that.
All right. Gavin Newsom, 2028. I mean, I know it's so early to talk about, but it's a lot. Come on. He's obviously running. Everything he's doing seems to be in preparation. I'm curious if you could give a little bit of your assessment of him as a lifelong Californian. How do you think he'll be received by the Democratic Party?
Oh, they'll love him. The Democratic Party will love him.
The base, maybe the voters.
Yeah, the base. That's what I mean.
Yeah.
Because...
And you'll be thinking...
That I want to slit my wrist. That's what I'll be thinking.
Okay.
Because I know too much about him.
Yeah.
I've lived under his leadership here in California, and he's very corrupt. He is slimy, and he's basically the political equivalent of a used car salesman. That's who Gavin Newsom is.
So if Gavin Newsom wins the Democratic nomination and he's running against, let's say, J.D. Vance.
Oh.
Yeah, how are you going to,
Another election where I write in a candidate.
Yeah, and you'll have to speak your truth about Gavin. And,
about both of them, of course. I'm really hoping that we'll have other options.
All right. Anna Kasparian, thanks for joining us. I appreciate it.
Thank you for having me.